Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Tonight is a workshop, Beyond Kegels, Boost Your Agility, Stop Back Pain and Leaks. Can you change the slide? So I'm Samantha Warskett, and I'm an applied movement neurology practitioner here at the Movement Company. And I wanted to give this workshop that gives a little different angle to the pelvic floor and how to help it. So the goal of the workshop is to explain how the pelvic floor functions, to learn how to rehab the pelvic floor, and to leave with some easy exercises. And so this workshop is for you if you're a runner who wants to improve your stride and stability. If you're an athlete who experiences incontinence due to childbirth or after childbirth, and if you've been dealing with chronic unexplained back pain that just doesn't seem to get better no matter what you do. And I'll go to the next one. And what you'll learn tonight is about how the emotional motor system controls the pelvic floor, and I'll go much more into depth on that, about the connection between the foot and the lower leg and the pelvic floor, and then again, some exercises that don't involve Kegels. And next one, or are we good? Your emotions of, oh, it's now recording. Identify how your emotions can affect your neurology, which then affect your pelvic floor. And this is really important for urge incontinence, and we'll go through this further in the talk. Oh, so I'll do a little more introduction on myself. I'm an applied movement neurology practitioner. I have a Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology. I have been 25 years as a cycling coach. I have to look at the slide because I can't remember it all. I was a director sportif for a women's team, Team Infinite, and was a guest director sportif for pro teams, women's pro teams. And I also worked with I was a training director sportif for the Canadian national team in Europe during the spring season. And I also was a cyclist myself and had my own business, personal training and fitness classes. And now I'm also, besides being an applied movement neurology practitioner, student of acupuncture. And then the next person is the owner of the clinic, my lovely assistant, Luke, who is controlling the slides. He's a chiropractor, and he was a chiropractor at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics for the Canadian cycling team. He's also an athlete. He's also a cyclist. I call him the Swiss Army knife because he has many tools, and he's a good sport for being my assistant. The next person at the clinic is Valerie, who's really helpful with exercises for the feet. She is also a chiropractor and former figure skater, and she often does treatments from the feet up, which I find really helpful for pelvic floor stuff. And then the next person is Sweet Eva, who is our physiotherapist. I just blanked out on that. And she's a chronic pain specialist. She's doing her master's in chronic pain, and she's also a runner, so she knows all problems with the pelvic floor. And finally, there's Yannick, our massage therapist, and he's great with sports injuries. He's also an endurance athlete and competitive cyclist, and he's a deep thinker in that he analyzes everything. And he comes up with some really great ideas. So just to introduce what I'm going to be going over. So it's first, which most people don't know about, but is very impactful for the pelvic floor and the neurology. then the structure of the lower body and what you can do after that. And part of the structure of the lower body, I'll be talking about the meridians or channels in Chinese medicine. So the emotional motor system is a really interesting part of our neurology. So a functional motor system is when your brain goes, hey, I want to do a bicep curl, and you do your bicep curl. So that's where you've consciously thought about it. The emotional motor system is an unconscious system. And it was first discovered when there was this woman who had a stroke. And I'm going to take my mask off so I can demonstrate in a second. And when she tried to smile consciously, half of her face would droop. But when she unconsciously smiled out of actual joy, her whole face moved in a beautiful smile. And this is when so I'll just give you an example. So a conscious smile actually looks kind of freaky. It's sort of like that. The emotional motor system is when you put the emotion into the smile, so it's still moving, but now your face lights up and people realize that you're full of joy or you're happy. So I think I would need a joke, but I think I can express that emotion. So the emotional motor system is what allows us to express emotion on our face. It's what allows us to express emotion in our voice through, so when you hear somebody speaking, you can often tell if they're tired, depressed, happy, just by the rhythm and the way their voice is. It also controls our breathing, and it controls our pelvic floor. And what's very interesting about it is it also controls women's sexual function, not men's. So and that's where a lot of the research in it goes, but I'm going to talk more about the motions behind peeing and pooing, basically. So what the basic theory behind it is if you're being attacked by a lion, you don't want to have to stop and poo. You either get it all out and run away, or you hold it all in and run away. And it can't be a conscious thing because your life's on the line and you need to either hold it or get rid of it. And if you think about that, when somebody's really, really scared, their bladder may totally empty and they have absolutely no control over it. That's their emotional motor system keeping them safe in a certain sense. So we'll just change the slide. So that's more about so it's all about keeping you safe, the emotional motor system. So it's moving your muscles in an unconscious way instead of that conscious way of doing a bicep curl or doing dancing or anything with your arms and legs. I'm thinking about it now, what I'm going to do. Whereas the emotional motor system is moving my face with either the emotion of what I'm speaking about or I'm reacting to the people I'm seeing. And that's completely unconscious. And a really good example of it when you come to the pelvic floor is imagine you're going around a mall shopping for hours on end, you're drinking a lot of water or whatever, and you know the toilets are really dirty at the mall and you don't want to use them. And you don't feel like you have to go pee the whole time. You get in your car, you drive home, you step out of your car, you get to the front door, your brain tells you you're somewhere safe, and it's like, holy cow, I've got a full bladder and I really need to make it to the bathroom. So your emotional motor system kept you safe by not allowing you to even have the feeling of having to go pee until it was safe to go pee. So we'll just go to the next. So I kind of like this picture because it shows where the nerves come out of the spine, and a lot of innervation for your lower legs go through the pelvic floor. There's, as you can see, I don't know if I can point to it, but this is your little tailbone here, and sacrum, and your lumbar spine is further up. And and if you look at all the nerves that are coming out of it, most of them come out, especially through here. It's called the cauda equina. These are nerves that all work the lower legs. And they are intrinsically connected to your feet, actually. So what's really cool about this is to do exercises for your pelvic floor. You don't even need to touch it. You can use the feet to do that. So think about that when you hear about that gymnastics coach who was doing manual therapy on gymnasts. I always think about that because it was totally unnecessary. You can just roll the feet or do things on the lower leg to release it. So we'll just move on. So I wanted to talk, the next part I want to talk about the structure. I was going into that a little bit, but how fascia affects, I'll put this back on, how the fascia affects the pelvic floor. And a lot of people don't know what fascia is, so I'll just kind of try and give you a visual of it. So we'll just go to the next slide and then we'll come back up. So the fascia is like this intricate kind of glove for our whole body. If you took the fascia off a person, it would still look like a person's suit. And it has many purposes. It can keep the muscles intact so that they have a bit more pull or a way of contracting, but it also sends neural signals outside of the nerves through the whole body. So it allows a signaling connection through very distal parts of the body. So we'll just go back up. So in that connection, I'm saying emotions are held in the fascia in that neural connection. And what the mechanism with that is that, again, if you're being attacked by a lion or a lion jumps out of you, you don't have time to go, oh my God, there's a lion. You just have to run away. The next time you see a lion and it jumps out, your body, the fascia in your body has kept that memory of the scary lion and running away, and allows you to run away or react just a little bit faster, because it has that neural connection in the fascia, which is connected to the muscles, to allow you to just get going a little faster and hopefully save your life. So then from there, I'll go to the lower leg and foot and talk about why tight feet can affect the pelvic floor. And also, I'm going to go over Chinese medicine, the meridians that come up the leg from the bottom of the foot and go through the pelvis and affect the pelvic floor too. So we can go back to this side. Actually, I'm going to go past this slide to the next one. So there's pressure points in the fascia, and often they also correlate to acupuncture points. But they're points where you can actually see them. So if you were to look at this point and press on it, and if it feels really tight, it may be an indication that you're going to need to either roll the fascia or loosen the fascia in that part of the leg. The other classic spot is right under the foot. And that actually, in several ways, signals right up to the pelvic floor. They're getting a recording of this. So you can look at this on your own time and look at those different points of the fascia and see if you can release like a whole limb or something by just pressing on those points. So we'll go to the next slide. So Chinese medicine view of this is that in our body, we have what in Chinese, the translation from Chinese would be ditches, channels, or meridians. And they're where energy and blood run. and they can get stuck very easily. So there's, oh, I put 4, but actually I'm going to just talk about 2 of the channels. So this is the most classic one. It's the kidney channel. It's sort of related to the organ, but everything in Chinese medicine is a little metaphorical. So why it's considered the kidney channels, because it goes through the kidney, it goes through the pelvic floor, it affects peeing, but it holds the emotion of fear in Chinese medicine, which is related to the kidney, because as we know, when we get scared, we pee automatically. So I'm trying to explain this so it doesn't get too complicated. The channel starts on the foot, comes up by the inside of the ankle, comes up the leg, right through the pelvic floor, near the genitals, and then right up the front of the body. And you can see that. And it actually hits the lower back too. When things get stuck, especially in the lower leg or the bottom of the foot, then the energy and the blood in that channel gets stuck. And they can be stuck because of emotions of fear, or it could get stuck because of injury. You hit your leg or something on the inner leg, or you've torn something, whatever kind of injury, and then that can affect the pelvic floor. The next channel I'm going to talk about is the liver channel. The liver channel is a little more forward on the leg. It starts on the top of the foot, comes up and wraps around the genitals, goes through the pelvic floor, and then comes up the side. If you get pain through your ribs here, you probably have a bit of liver qi stagnation, which is where the energy of the liver channel is not running as smoothly as it should. And the emotion of with the liver is stress and anger. So a lot of people in today's society have that issue. And when it gets really stuck, it can affect the genitals or the pelvic floor. And a lot of that liver personality is somebody who represses their emotions. They repress their anger, they repress their stress, they pretend everything's fine, and then it comes out in different ways. So sometimes you see that it comes out in incontinence. The energy has to go somewhere. It can come out in rib pain, headaches, eye issues, lower leg issues. So when, I guess my message is, when emotions are not attended to, allowed to move smoothly, then it comes out physically in your body in some way. So we do see this with incontinence issues. Then the other part, we're going back to sort of more of a Western view, is how the muscles of the lower leg affect the feet and then move up to the pelvic floor, and how when we walk, we're contracting and relaxing the pelvic floor. So people don't think of the pelvic floor as a muscular thing that does very much, but it's intrinsically involved in gait. So so it contracts when you're, are you able to show my foot? I'll go. So when you're walking, you go heel toe. It contracts when you're on the ball of your foot, through the walking. And then it's holding eccentrically. So it's just holding there when you're standing on a flat foot. So I'll just go over that again. The pelvic floor contracts when you're toeing off in a walk or a run. And it's just staying firm when you're on a flat foot. So you can see how for runners, you can bring it back up. For runners, their pelvic floor is actually getting quite the workout, especially runners that are doing sort of more the pose method of running, or the, what's it called, chi running. Where you're more on the ball of the foot, you're constantly contracting your pelvic floor. It's not getting a bit of a break, which is fine. I'm completely for those types of running. But if you're going from the old heel toe form of running to then changing more of a ball of the foot type of run, then you're going to have to do things for your pelvic floor so it just doesn't tighten up, tighten up, tighten up. So yeah, that was sort of more, I really want to make sure people get that and understand how the movement of the foot can really control whether it contracts or relaxes. So we can go to the next. So some of the exercises I wanted to go over are going to be gait-based exercises. They're going to have a bit of a twist in them so that you can stretch and contract the pelvic floor. And another exercise is like a traditional Chinese thing. It's called gua sha, where you're going to try and loosen up the channels and keep the energy flowing through the channel. And then how to use a ball on trigger points or on the ball of the foot, rolling the ball of the foot to help release further up. So the first exercise, basic lunges. I'm going to do this in my bare feet, but I'm going to get people to, so a basic lunge, you can see there, it's just kind of coming up and you could walk or come back. But this, I'm going to do a lunge with the idea of like an exaggerated walk with a twist. So you're going to bring your hand forward and back and look behind you. Forward and look behind. I'll just do it one more time. Whoops. Forward and then back. So you're swinging your arms with the movement as though you were walking, but then turning your head so you're getting a little bit of a twist through the whole thing. And that twist will mobilize the pelvic floor as well. So the next one I'm going to do is called a curtsy squat. I'll stand in front of you. I like this one because it kind of moves the elements, the legs in all different directions. So curtsy squat is just basically, think curtsy for the queen. And you're twisting, as I bring my leg behind me, I'm stretching and twisting the pelvic floor. And then I'm changing my weight on my foot. And if you want to, you can add your arms into it. You can feel like a true aristocrat or like you're going to see the queen. So those are pretty easy. The one thing I would just say with the curtsy squat, traditionally it's done where you just bring the leg back and you squat. I want you to think about taking a big step and bringing the leg right back. So again, you're trying to stress that pelvic floor, trying to twist it and stretch it and contract it. The other one is side lunges. So can you see me? Yeah. You're just coming out to the side. I'm pushing off. I'll only go this way so I'm not in the light. And you're keeping your weight on your heel. You're stretching through here and coming up. So you could do one side like this, and then you can switch to the other side. And take your time with it. I'm getting a workout. I can't believe how much I'm breathing. So again, you want to feel that stretch, but you don't want to overstretch it. So play with your own physiology, what works for you. So those are the big motor exercises. The next exercise, actually, I'm going to get you to just show the screen. So keep going. Those are the side. So these are meridians, and I want you to pay attention to the inner ones. So this one is the kidney one right here, and that's the liver. So you can, now I'll get you to turn to me. I think they put, okay. You can get anything with a rounded edge. This is the gua sha tool, a spoon. Anything with a rounded edge, or if you want to get really fancy, you can get like a Graston kind of thing. And you take it. So if you're going to do the kidney, you start in between your ankle and the tendon, and you just start scraping up. Obviously, it's probably better not with jeans on, but get the idea. And it will really loosen the meridian. So that's the kidney one. More up here, so I'll get my pen straight. So this is the ankle. This is the bone. So it's just at the edge of that bone. So my bone is here. It's just at the edge. And you would just go up by there. You will feel which one is right for you. The one that's the most painful is the one that's correct. The ones that's super easy, that's probably not the one that you're having the issue with. You can just, if you want to, this is like a stone gua sha tool, super easy to use, or you can just get anything with a bit of an edge on it to use. And I forgot to get a ball, like a little ball to roll. I'll just get my assistants to get a ball for me. So for the bottom of your foot, you can use like a ball like this or a harder ball, and can just start. Can you see? Sort of, actually, I'm just going to show you. If you can place it between where the bottom of the big toe and the second toe, right here on the bottom of your foot, like that. First of all, start with a bit of pressure and see how it feels. For me, that's not pleasant. And then I slowly move it and roll it. And I find like, oh, I find the points where the fascia is tight, the foot is tight, and I hold it until it relaxes. And then I just, oh, crap, that hurts. And I haven't done this for a while. I find the next spot and I just hold it, let it release, move it along, and then kind of explore the foot. So I'll see a lot of people, they roll the foot like this. I don't know if you can see it. It's really quick. I find that doesn't do as much as just finding the spot, pressing into it and holding and just letting it release slowly. Just like that. Good. I'll put my, you can go back to that. So that's kind of another, if you go to the next one. So that's another example of doing the foot. Whoops. Is to get one of those sort of mini little foam rollers and use it. And then the next thing you want to do is, I won't demo, but if you have something on the ground and you try and pick it up with your toes, and then that's strengthening it and you're releasing the fascia at the same time. And then the next thing you can do for your foot is you can walk on your toes or walk on your heels or walk on the sides of your feet or walk on the insides of your feet and slowly build up the strength of your feet and the inner leg. I'm going to just put these down. And then if you can go to the next one. I'm just going to talk about a couple of cases I've had, so you kind of get a little bit more idea. So I had an older woman who had urge incontinence. So urge incontinence is that idea where you're doing your daily stuff and then you get home and suddenly you have to pee desperately and you can barely make it to the bathroom without peeing your pants. And she also had stress incontinence, where you get little dribbles of leaking all the time. So she had been, and she was kind of the person who motivated me to start talking about different ways of dealing with it, because she'd gone to see a lot of physiotherapists, a lot of invasive treatment, things like where they stuck stuff up her vagina and made her contract against it. And basically told her she was perfectly fine and that she was just too stressed, and that's why she was getting incontinence. So it was a bit putting the blame on the patient, and nothing really helped. The only thing that helped a little bit is they told her not to go pee every time she feels like having to go pee, but to hold it for a little bit longer so that the bladder could stretch out a bit. But otherwise, she was pretty discouraged. She was starting to think about having to wear diapers. She was a very active person. She did not look her age, and it's just really discouraging to, in your 70s, to have to start wearing diapers when everybody thinks you're in your 50s otherwise. So we did a few treatments. We did 4 treatments, and after the first one, she definitely got relief that it started to come back. I was seeing her once a week and it started to come back, did another treatment, started to last a little longer, did another one. And I was getting her to, at the same time, think about, well, besides the exercises and rolling the feet, but also to think about her stress, but not in a blaming type of way, but how was her stress kind of deregulating the nervous system and changing the signaling to her pelvic floor. And so I managed to get her into a bit of a meditation routine, which really helped as well. And I still check in with her. This was several years ago. Still check in, still good. She sometimes, when stress goes up, she has a little bit of urge incontinence. She does her extra exercises and her meditation, and it goes away. So she was kind of my person that got me into thinking about doing this. The next person I met after doing my very first workshop, she was a yoga instructor. She didn't have incontinence. She had 3 children. I think she was in her 40s or 50s. But she had back pain. And I didn't really explain this earlier, but the reason the pelvic floor can affect the back is because it's that hammock that holds everything above it in a certain sense. And it also is about connecting the legs. So loose, it's not giving those organs, the lower back, the legs, the support they need. And then that can happen with compensation. You can get back pain from that. So she had this kind of weird back pain. She went into yoga because of it, became a yoga instructor, and it helped a lot, but she was still having some kind of pain. And then again, it came back after a bit. I only needed to do 3 treatments with her to get it regulated. And we figured out what yoga, instead of giving her my exercises, I tried to work out what yoga exercises would help to stimulate, stretch, and regulate the pelvic floor. We figured that out. She has amazing knowledge. And she's been good since. And now she's using those yoga exercises in yoga classes. And then if you can go to the next person. So trail runner, had 2 children, young children, And she didn't really have incontinence unless she started to go harder, if she tried to take her speed up. So I think she normally ran about 12K an hour. And then if she wanted to take it up to like 14K an hour, lengthen her stride, then she got an incontinence. So in that sense, it was more the pelvic floor had just been through a lot of stress having kids. I think her eldest was 5, so it hadn't been a long time. She'd had 3rd-degree tears, so that's kind of traumatic. So it was about, that took more treatment because of the cycle. And if you've had kids, you know, it takes a hammering, and there's a bit of a psychological trauma to all of that. So took a few more treatments to kind of get that signaling back. Looked at her training and slowly increased speeds, did kind of intervals that weren't full out intervals, but looked at how we could slowly increase the pace without leaking. And she seems to be doing a lot better as well, because she's kept to that program of just stretching and stressing at the same time. And then I've been powering through this. But I'm going to ask people if they have questions afterwards. So I always like to say, what is a good course of action after getting all this information bombarded at you? So this is being recorded. So you re-look at the recording, check out the exercises. And also from what I've said, try and identify where your issues are coming up. Is it the emotional motor system? Is one big clue is if you have urge incontinence. And if it is the emotional motor system, it's probably a good idea to come in for at least 1 or 2 treatments to get that regulated. And then once that's regulated, you can do the exercises and stuff to keep everything in good order. And then really getting into the ankle, the foot stuff, the rolling the feet, doing the exercises, looking after your feet will do wonders for your pelvic floor. And a lot of people don't realize that. So that walking barefoot, rolling it, finding those little trigger points on the bottom of your foot. And then after that, it's that gua sha. It's like finding the different channels, finding which one affects you more, and keep the energy going through it so that it doesn't get stuck in that area. And then finally add those kind of twisty lunges, as long as you have the stability. So the curtsy squat, the kind of more walking lunge, and the side lunges to your routine, that will keep everything nice and agile and in good order. And doing all of that, I had said at the beginning, it will help with agility. If you do those big gross movements where you're really stressing what the legs are doing, the agility will automatically come. So you'll be able to balance on one foot, switch really easily. That will all come when the pelvic floor is in good order and you're able to move the legs in all different directions. And we'll go to the next slide. So I had put this for the first time I did the talk. This is research that you can look at. So maybe if you're just getting the recording, you can take in the name of the researcher. Geert Holstad is the biggest researcher in the emotional motor system. And then this is the second one is about how the emotional motor system affects the gastrointestinal system. So we didn't really talk about that, but it's kind of interesting. And if you want to kind of get geeky about it, it's something really cool to read about. So we'll go to the next one. And then I'm going to take questions after this. So because I want to thank everybody for coming, and because you've participated, you can have a 20-minute free consult with me on any issues you have with pelvic floor, your lower back, or stride that you think have to do with the pelvic floor, and maybe I can sort out some of the exercises or help you figure out what you need to target first. And did I say that? Yeah, it's free if you sign up within the next 24 hours. So you can go to the Movement Co company or call and we'll book it in, or message me or email me and I can book it in, a 20-minute free consult. And besides that, thank you. And is there any questions? Because that was a lot of information and I wanted to leave a lot of time for questions to see if you have troubles with the exercises or you want to understand a little bit more. So just let me know. Yes, Luke. Yeah.
If I'm doing both the exercises and the gua sha, is it better to do the exercises first and gua sha, or gua sha first and exercise?
Yeah. So Luke was saying if he was doing the exercises I gave and the gua sha, which is the scraping of the meridians, which one would he do first, or does it matter? I would do the gua sha second, depending on how hard you go. Like it can cause bruising, which is okay. It can feel a little uncomfortable. So then you may not want to do the exercises afterwards. So probably do the exercises, get everything moving, and then open up the meridians with the gua sha. Yeah, Basha. Yeah, actually you could do that. So Basha was asking, is it good to do gua sha with heat? So if you were sitting in a sauna and you were doing the gua sha, is that okay? And I would say yes. It's one of its purposes is to actually release heat. So if you're getting overheated and you're doing it, it might actually allow you to stay a little longer in the sauna. It's often used on children, not very fiercely, when they have a fever, to kind of release the fever on their backs, because children, you can't needle as much. So I think that would be fine. You just want to maybe use an oil or something. Well, if you're really sweaty, it will slide. But how often would you do the exercises per week, and how many reps approximately? So these exercises, you can look at them in two different ways. You can look at them as mobility. So then you can do them every day without too much intensity. Or you could look at them as strength training, which I would say 3 times a week. And then you're looking at, I would start with 5 if you've never done those kind of lunges. 1 set of 5 and work yourself up to maybe 3 sets of 10 if you're doing them as a strength training. But be really careful, because it's easy to get the technique wrong and then it's easy to hurt the knees. So I would treat them as mobility at first. So don't load it very much. And so I'm just going to show. So say if you were to do the curtsy squat, if I was going to do it as mobility, I take it wide, but I wouldn't pause in the squat. So I'm not loading the squat very much. If I was going to do it as a strength training, I might even hold weights, and then I would load it by coming lower. But I would practice the mobility first, practice the movement, get used to it if you've never done that before, and then get into doing it as strength training. So I hope that answered it, because it's kind of 2 answers for 1 question. Is there any other messages or questions? Okay, great. I'm glad that answered.
I have one.
Sure.
You mentioned the transit connection. Where's that?
That's a good question. So Luke asked, I mentioned that the pelvic floor and the foot have an intrinsic connection and what does that actually mean? And I'm realizing I'm using terms that may not make sense. So yeah, so they're connected. When I say intrinsic, they're connected in several different ways. They're connected by fascia, they're connected by the neural system, and they're connected through the meridian system. So the signaling of through that area is like, triple, it's not triple, it's like what would you say? It's like multi-dimensional in a certain sense. And you can take advantage of that if you understand it. I hope that answers it. Yeah. Are there any other questions? Is that it? So if people want help, like personal help, just take that 20-minute free consult. If you go on the Movement Company website, you'll see that all of our emails are our first name. So mine's Samantha at themovementcompany.com. Oh yeah, maybe Luke can type it in. You can email me. I'll just wait. So you can copy that and paste it, and then you can email me, and then I can book it in, or you can call and have it booked in. Oh, how do you rest the pelvic floor? I spend a lot of time standing and walking throughout the day. So resting the pelvic floor is basically getting off your feet. So I'll give you a bit of a stretch. The butterfly stretch in yoga is kind of a nice way of kind of giving it relief. If you lie down on your back, put your feet together and your knees, pretend my elbows are my knees, and just let those drop. That's a really good of giving it a really good break and kind of a stretch at the same time. But yeah, if you're on your feet a lot, it's not getting the rest, basically. So you have to get off your feet in some way to rest it. I hope that answered that. Okay, great. Is there a connection between shallow breathing and adding stress to the pelvic floor? The breath does have a connection with the pelvic floor in that it can cause pressure. So if you really belly breathe and hold deep, you can actually press down on the pelvic floor. And I don't know if anybody watches CrossFit, but you'll see, especially female CrossFit athletes, they'll do some really hard, I don't know, squat or clean and jerk where they're taking a weight and bringing it up, and they'll just pee. And it's because their pelvic floor is not as strong as it should be, and the pressure they're using is pressing down. So a shallow breath, is there a connection between shallow breathing and adding stress to the pelvic floor? I'm not quite clear, but shallow breathing can actually make for a tight diaphragm, which is the muscle right underneath the ribs, which then, I don't think it would add stress to the pelvic floor, but it might make the pelvic floor not as stable, if that makes sense. It's because it's not having that elasticity. Okay, great. I'm glad that makes sense. If you're somebody who breathes really shallowly, it's really good to do breathing exercises. That will affect your lower back or your mid back if you have very tight through this area. This is a little extra, but you can lie on the floor, put your hands and breathe into the belly and try and stretch, and then breathe back in. Because that shallow breathing or even mouth breathing can help really affect your whole health. So if you want to come in for a 20-minute consult, I'll talk about that too. Is there anything else? I think that's it. We're almost at 8, so If anybody has anything else, this is last call for questions. Okay, we'll let it go. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope that was helpful, and I hope that helps you a lot. Great. I'm glad it's helpful. Bye.
Thank you so much.